I recently had a conversation with a couple who are in their mid-60s with about $1.5 million in retirement. And the question was, can we retire? And I thought that the conversation that we had would be very instructive for those of you who are considering retirement and wondering whether or not you can retire as well. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the most crucial questions that you need to be asking so you know whether you are on track to enjoy that retirement you so richly deserve. But before we get there, subscribe to my channel, hit the notifications bell. I have over 30 years in this business, and I want to share what I've learned and the conversations and insights I've gotten from my clients with you so that you can better improve what you're doing as you think about your retirement. So I'm going to pose to you a little bit of a different question than what I just mentioned, right? They were looking to retire. But one of the reality checks as you get closer to that retirement or think about getting closer to that retirement is, if you could retire today, would you? And it's a very interesting question I pose to many of the people I talk with because they sort of have a little bit of a pause and they hesitate and they realize, I'm retired now. Is that really what I want? Now, it's interesting, this pandemic was sort of a glimpse into what retirement would be, right? We had no place to go to, no workplace to go, no colleagues to talk to around the water bubbler. We were home with our spouse or partner 24/7. For some, that worked out very well. For others, but it was a glimpse into what this next chapter would be. So I get back to that question. If you could retire and that is your life from here on out, is that what you want? Or let me pose it even a different way. How do we gain the fulfillment, rewarding lifestyle that we need looking forward and still have enough money to pursue our goals? And those are the types of questions that you need to be diving into as you start to discover whether or not you can or wish to retire. So in my first book, entitled The Changing Landscape of Retirement, What You Don't Know Could Hurt You, I wrote a foreword that was really the story of a client of mine. And it was very instructive for me. And I want to share that with you. So she had been working for her organization. She was 57 years old. She'd been working there for 39 years. You do the math. It's the only job she ever had, right? And she had reached the point, and she was still getting a pension or qualified for a pension from them. She was very lucky. And she had now reached that point where she could get 100% of that pension. And she said, I think I'll retire. Let's find out. So she came in, we did the planning, and we took a look at the numbers, the finances. And the finances said that based on her goals, she was all set. With that pension, she could put in her paperwork to leave that job and go on to this next chapter of life, all ready to rock and roll. So we set a time about a month later for us to meet. She was going to hand in her papers. And she comes in and she sits down and she starts crying. And I say, Jean, what's the story? She says, well, what I realized was I can retire. However, I realize this is my second home. I have a reason to get up in the morning, a place to go to, people to talk to. I am a respected member of a community helping to grow an organization, and I'm going to lose what has been my identity when I go to retire. So as it turns out for Jean, and we're talking about two different things here, the finances and the emotions. The money, which will allow us to pursue our goals, and how we feel about ourselves and how we're going to get fulfilled. Well, money was all set, but she didn't feel like she would be fulfilled. She delayed her retirement another 3 years. So I want to share with you some of the very specific questions you need to now ask so that you can deal with both the finances and the fulfillment. So there's 5 big areas that I want to talk about right now with regards to the finances. First of all, can I retire? And the headline there is really, am I going to outlive my money? The second big question is with regards to Social Security. There's 567 different strategies. Do you know which one of those will help you maximize your family income over your lifetime? The third question, how do I reduce taxes? It's not so much the income I bring in, but the minimization of taxes. The fourth set of questions deals with how much money can I spend? And it really talks about what I call the bucket list. And we'll go over that. And the fifth topic is what I call legacy planning. How do I take care of my spouse, and then the kids and the grandkids? So let's get into it. We'll start with, can I retire? Will I outlive my money? That's the seminal question that we have here. One of the biggest fears people who are making the transition into retirement have. I don't understand how you get a handle on that question and get the answer that you need without doing the planning, okay? And so much of it is driven by cash flow. I've talked about this on this channel over and over again. I think our industry has done you wrong to just focus on the investments, because retirement is about cash. Cash is king. So the question is, based on the money you have coming in and the money you've accumulated, will you outlive your income? And some of the questions you need to be thinking about it, some of the assumptions you need to be putting in when you do the planning are as follows. First, the way we do it with our clients, I believe that we always want to put in margins of error. In other words, I don't want you to plan for perfect, because perfect never happens, okay? In terms of inflation, put it a little higher than you might think it will be. In terms of life expectancy, depending upon your health situation, for a normal scenario, we typically plan for our clients to live somewhere in the vicinity of 90 to 92. Again, we don't want to plan for, living to 86, yet we live to 92. We may outlive our money at that point in time. When it comes to the investment assumptions, I always go a little bit more conservative than I think might be reality, because the real question is, what if you don't get what you think is perfect? What if you don't get, maybe you are looking at a 6% rate of return? Well, can you accomplish your goals if you only got a 4% rate of return? So I also want you to put in, when it comes to your cash flow needs, I want you to bump that up a little bit more than you think. Again, I don't want to plan for perfect. So if you have, let's call it a $8,000 a month need, maybe you bump it up about 10% to close to $9,000. Give yourself some margins for error so everything doesn't have to be so perfect, because life isn't that way. Another thing that's really important to recognize, those first couple of years that you retire are the most vulnerable years you will have in terms of how you feel about your money. Now, when we're working, markets can go up and down, and we've got time to allow for, when the market goes down, for it to come back up, and there's no impact, assuming you didn't sell. But once you make that irrevocable decision to go to retire, and if at that moment of retirement in those next couple of years, hypothetically, the markets go down, you are going to feel very insecure at that point, because there's little you can do, no more contributions. How will it impact your income now and later? So in your planning, what we do with our clients is, for those first couple of years just after retirement, we actually planned for 2 down years. We don't want to just paint a rosy picture. We want to put in the what if. It's important to recognize there's three different stages of income, if you will, in retirement. So let's assume you're 63 and you have $1.5 million. We want to plan for what your income need is now until you get Social Security. Now that begs the question of Social Security, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So that's the first stage. Then the second stage is until you get to age 72. Where does the income need to come from? How much do you need? You may need to plan a little bit differently. And why the age of 72? Because if you have a substantial IRA, because of required minimum distribution starting at the age of 72, you're going to have to draw out a significant amount of money out of that IRA, and you're going to have to account for it, which may mean the planning will be a little bit different. And one of the items that I think is really important for you to understand, and I talk about this on my channel a lot, we call it the 4% rule. All right? In our industry, there's a fairly standardized way of thinking that somewhere in the vicinity of 4%, or the maximum, the ceiling, the amount that you can take out of your portfolio for income over time, with a goal that you won't deplete your assets, okay? So if you take 4% out of your portfolio, the theories say that with a properly constructed portfolio, you should not be depleting your assets. Once you start taking more than 4% over a period of time, you may run into trouble. Certainly no guarantees for any performance here. But it's important to recognize that as you do the planning, you should probably not be thinking about taking any more than 4% from the portfolio. And for our clients, we like to keep that number down to about 2 or 3%, depending upon what their assumptions and their scenario is. The last important question you need to be thinking about with regards to can I retire is if there is a shortfall, what do we do? If you have a portfolio and you must take more than 4% out of it, which may mean down the road you may be depleting that asset base, then you've got choices, okay? You can defer your retirement a couple of years. You can get a part-time job, some may want to, just to fill the time. Or you could lower the amount that you expect to spend. So this is a good sample of the types of questions you should be asking with regards to the first big topic, which is, can I retire? Will I outlive my money? The second big topic is Social Security. As I said, there's 567 different claiming strategies. And depending upon your health, the amount of assets that you have, life expectancy, income need now and later, that decision-making process will be different for every one of you. Are you married, divorced, widowed? All of this comes into play. I will tell you that when we spoke with Jim and Lori, and here's a particular circumstance for you where he was not very healthy, and his life expectancy was expected to be shorter than normal. She was going to be relying, Lori, on his work record. Her spousal benefit would be more than what she could get on her own work record. And one of the particular advanced planning scenarios with regards to Social Security is if he was the higher earner and his health is bad, and she's going to be relying upon income when he passes later on in life, you may be better off deferring taking his Social Security until 70. And the reason is that her widowed benefit will be based on when he started to take his benefit. So if he isn't expected to live, let's say, much longer than 70, let's say 73, 75, somewhere in that vicinity, she will be getting a much higher income as a widow versus if he had taken it even at full retirement age or earlier. So it's just one of those scenarios you need to be aware of. And if you go to our banner, I have a free chapter of our book, Don't Outlive Your Money in Retirement. It's the second chapter. It's devoted strictly to Social Security. Click on the banner, I'll send you the chapter, and it will give you some answers that you need so you can have more of an idea of which one of the strategies might be best for you. The third set of questions deals with the topic of how to reduce taxes. And this is a really important thing. For Jim and Lori, of the $1.6 million that they had, about $1 million was in his 401k and about $600,000 was in their personal or taxable accounts. So there was some flexibility with regards to the planning as to which one of these buckets we are going to be taking income from. Now, as a general rule, if we took income from the $600,000 bucket, the personal or taxable bucket, more than likely we would be paying less in taxes because it's money that's already been taxed. Unless they were to sell something, but then if it was a long-term capital gain, it may be at a 15 or 20% capital gains rate, which is still less than taking money out of the IRA, which is fully taxable at your marginal tax bracket. So it may cost you a lot more to take money out of the IRA versus taking money out of the personal account. Now, I've already mentioned this. At age 72, we have no choice. We have to start taking about 3.5% a year, the first year, out of the retirement accounts. You have no choice. You're going to pay taxes on all of that income. But between now and age 72, you have choices. And in the planning, you need to identify from which one of these accounts you're better off to take the money from in order to reduce the taxes. Now, one tip that I will share with you, it may be okay to do it now, and maybe, if you're in your 50s, it's actually a better time to do it, but you may want to consider a conversion to a Roth IRA. And the benefit of the Roth IRA really is, number one, you are not going to be forced to have a required minimum distribution. And number two, when the money comes out, it's tax-free. Now, if you do make a conversion, there's a cost to making the conversion, so you have to do the math. I highly recommend you talk to your team of advisors as to whether or not this is a good time or when you should or if you should do a Roth. But a Roth is certainly a great consideration when you're looking at holding on to more of that income and reducing taxes. I'm going to go over the next two financial questions in just a moment, but I want you to stay tuned because I think that one of the biggest fears that we have as we transition into retirement is not the money, and I want to deal with that, so stay with me, okay? So the next big topic is how much can I spend, or I'm going to call it the bucket list. So when I ask people what it is they really want to do when they go to retire, many of them say, I want to travel, I want to buy that other car, I want to do the home improvement, I want to take my grandkids to Disney, all of this stuff. I want to go garden. A lot of this, though, is an expenditure or a earmarking of additional monies beyond the day-to-day money that we have to account for in our retirement. Let me share with you a particular story, and it addresses another really important question and fear that we have as we go into retirement. And the question is, if I spend my money today, will it be there tomorrow? So here's the call I got a number of years ago from a client. Bobby calls me up and she says, can I do the kitchen cabinets? Well, if you know me, I don't do kitchen cabinets, okay? But this is what she was truly asking. Number one, if I spent the money on the kitchen cabinets, what would the impact be on the pursuit of other goals or bucket list items down the road? So we put in there, in her plan, an $8,000 expense. That's what it was for her. And figured out that at the time, it would not impact her ability to continue to pursue her bucket list. So then the question was, if I do have the green light to do so, where does the money come from? And how can I do it in as tax efficient manner as possible? So you can fill in kitchen cabinet with whatever you want. I want to take the grandkids to Disney. We're going to go in 3 years. We're going to spend $15,000. So what you do is you plug into your plan in 3 years, $15,000, and see where the best place would be for it to come out of, and whether or not after that expenditure, it would have any impact on your ability to pursue the rest of your bucket list items. That's how you get your head wrapped around and take the mystery out of the question, which is, if I spend it today, will it be there tomorrow? The last item that we have to deal with on the financial side, and then I'll get to the other big question, which is non-financial, is legacy planning. How do I take care of my spouse? You know, when I see people and they come into my office, a lot of times they talk about, am I ready to retire? What do I do with my investments? Yada, yada, yada. But right underneath that big question is almost always, when I'm gone, will my spouse be okay? So it's really important when you do the planning to understand what the surviving spouse's needs will be, what assets will be there for them. I already mentioned the Social Security decision in terms of taking care of her in a specific situation. So you really need to plan for whether or not he or she is going to be okay. And then once he or she passes, making sure, and most of this is estate planning, whether or not the kids and the grandkids or any charities that you have in your mind in terms of benefiting will be all right, will be all set when the both of you are gone. So those will give you a pretty good sense of the questions you need to ask with regards to those financial questions. Now I'll get to what may be the biggest fear outside of outliving your money, which is, what do I do with the rest of my life? And therein lies the underlying pause that sometimes I get to that question. Remember I posed at the beginning? If you could retire today, would you? It's the pause that Jean had when she could retire and we did the planning and she went, I don't know about that. I need to be rewarded. I need to be fulfilled. So you really need to, particularly with your spouse or partner, sit down and define the roles, define the needs, define how you're going to lead your life looking forward so that you can have the most fulfilling and enjoyable retirement because you've worked hard for it. You deserve it. And any other questions you may have, you can go to our playlist on the 7 key steps to not outliving your money.